Stage Door Theater Podcast in Toledo. Two theater dads who don't have a life hanging around the stage door in the back, hoping someone famous will come out and talk to us. And finally, someone did. Costume designer extraordinaire Kelly McBane.
So I've not actually met you before, though.
I have never met either of you.
This is the first time on this podcast that the guest is somebody I haven't met, because awesome. I think I'm fairly aware of a lot of people out there, but I also enjoy meeting new people, obviously. And you were recommended by Michael Barlos heavily to come in and talk about costuming.
Which is an honor, because I think Michael Barlos is fantastic, and I have costumed him, so he must not have been too adverse to my process.
What'd you costume him for?
Assassins at... it's the one in Upton.
You do... Oh, at the Village Players.
Village Players,
yes,
thank you.
Yes. So the goal of what we're doing here is Tom and I, we don't talk. You do all of the talking, because we know nothing. We are literally just fans of theater. And hence the name Stage Door, where the fans would sit out back and just wait for the people to come out and sign our pamphlets or our playbill, because we're pathetic little fans in the back. But we love it, and we came in, so we don't know anything, so we need you to do all the talking, tell us everything about what's going on, and we wanted to have everybody that was involved in theater, not just bring in the leads of the shows, because they get enough attention already. They don't need more attention. So.
Absolutely, and the show would be awfully boring if it was just people on a dark stage, naked, talking about nothing, or like undirected people, so... Yeah, there's a lot of people that make the process, and I don't think anyone in theater is unaware of that, but it does seem sometimes that people outside are. But it's a lot of pieces to make the proverbial pie.
How did you get into theater design though, or costume design, because that's something that I don't think people think about ever when they're growing up. I mean, I don't think anybody's necessarily thinking when they're 10 years old, I'm going to be a costume designer for Broadway shows.
Yeah, for sure. When I was 10, I wanted to be a dinosaur doctor. So,
awesome.
Yeah, so I actually, it's kind of two separate stories. So I had seen one production of a theater show prior to college, and that was, I think, Beauty and the Beast, and I was probably 9. It was very unmemorable. I remember I went because it was a school field trip. We had no theater in my school. I went to a very low income, there weren't a lot of extracurriculars or anything like that. So I had no experience with theater. What happened was I went to college for the thing that I think a lot of people go to college for when they don't know what they want to go to, communications.
Yeah, business communications major, yeah.
Absolutely. And at the time, what I thought I wanted to be was an investigative journalist. And the classes I was taking and the cohort that I was with were all very focused on broadcast journalism, and I was very bored, and I wasn't making friends, and I was considering dropping out. But my freshman advisor told me that he had to go to a meeting at the theater, and if I wanted to come with him, that he would introduce me to some people, and that he promised if I went with him that I would make friends. And I was like, well, that's a tall order, sir. But I went with him, and I walked in, and immediately, without prompting, someone was like, hey, do you know how to use a drill? And I was like, yeah. And that was it. So I just was kind of adopted into the theater department, and I have always been very good at putting things together and taking them apart. I'm very good at visualizing a three-dimensional object flat. I used to make kind of pretty astounding things out of my Legos and whatnot. So it seemed to just fit, even though I didn't really have the background. And I ended up in costumes specifically, really because I liked the environment, I think. I liked my professor a lot who taught costume design, and I think the thing I love most about costume design is how psychological it is. And so I think that...
What's that mean? I don't know what that means. Psychological costumes?
Yeah, so if you think about like the psychology of what we wear, it's very complex. You know, you might think that you just put on a jeans and a t-shirt for today, but there are so many things about your jeans and t-shirt and your shoes that tell me something about who you are. And a lot of those cues are nonverbal. We don't ever need to discuss them to know they're true, but I need them to know who you are in this world if I need to watch you interact with others. And so a lot of times when you're thinking about costume design, you're thinking about who this person is, where they are in their life, their state of mind, but then you also need to think about the state of mind of the world that they live in. And then on top of that, the third layer is the state of mind and psychology of the audience. So I need to consider what this person would wear and how the people are going to interpret what this person is going to wear. And I need to and you can't avoid stereotypes, you can't avoid things like that, but I need to either, whenever I dress someone a certain way, I need to understand that this is what the audience is going to think, and I'm either going to use that to tell them who this person is or to trick them into thinking this person is someone because it's important that we reveal later that they're someone else.
I love that.
Can you give me an example of that? Like in one of the shows that you've done where you've picked a player, a person, and adapted them to all those three of those things that you were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did a show once that there was a character who was ultimately going to be kind of the villain of the show. Not necessarily the villain, but like vixen-y seductress type. But when she comes in, we as the audience need to not know that about her. You know, we need to think that she's going to be this sweet, unassuming person so that whenever we find out that she is kind of puppet mastering, then it's a surprise. And that's important. That was important to the overall outcome of the show for the director. And so we just needed to make sure that whatever we did when she walked in the door, the impression that people got was like, oh, this is like a sweet girl next door. And then very shortly, we would start to see that her personality was not that at all. But then a lot of times we want people to know when that person comes on stage who they are. Or we at least want clues about them. If someone walks in and they're wearing a white t-shirt that's got stains on it and the collar's kind of stretched out and it's got black grayish schmutz on it, and on the jeans, like right here, there's a lot of like black grayish staining and some boots with similar things, you would look at that person and you might immediately think like, oh, that's a mechanic. And it might be important to the show that we know visually that person's a mechanic because we might not ever say it out loud, and so there's so much about costume design that hinges on understanding your audience and the potential psychology of your audience, and that will change with every kind of audience you have.
I noticed when you said the schmutz and you looked over at Kyle.
Oh, that hurts.
I did not.
Maybe that was me. So I'm sorry.
I love it though because this is why we wanted to have you come in because, we're simple. We're me as a fan, I'm just a simple fan who just loves these things, but I don't think about this stuff. But you're 1,000% correct. Mm-hmm. When somebody comes on the stage and let's say they're the bad guy in Little Shop of Horrors and he's got his leather jacket on and it's like you instantly have this perception of him and who he is.
Right. And that's a good example because Seymour, we need to have an instant impression of who Seymour is, but doesn't Seymour ultimately end up kind of the bad guy?
Yeah, he does.
He does. It's a bit of a trick. He's chopping up people and he's feeding them to a plant.
Right, and I'm not... Yeah.
Oh, you just ruined it for me now.
And I'm not... Spoiler
Sorry
alert.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that play's only been out for 20-some years, so... No, but... Yeah, and I'm not saying I would have made a different decision than he did, but I am saying that, at the end of the day, who really is the villain?
Oh. Look at this.
You're making us think.
I don't know.
Is that good?
Well, it hurts my head a little bit, so I don't know if it does.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was thinking again, like these costumes, and even when you look at Les Mis and you see Entourage out there, and he has a different vest compared to everybody else, it automatically signals to the audience, this guy's special. This guy's different. Why does he have something that everybody else doesn't? So
Right, because that basically, I've heard it referred to as like the peacock effect. It's like, look at me. I'm important. Something is going to happen here. And, we use costumes for so many things. Think about, the classic example of Romeo and Juliet, and the Montagues are in one color and the Capulets are in another. And the only way we can tell apart anybody in those big fight group scenes is because half of them are in red and half of them are in blue. And we need those purely as visual cues just to clarify things sometimes. But oftentimes it does go deeper than that.
Nice. Over time, do you have an estimate of how many shows you've actually done costume design in?
So I do operate in multiple spheres of the theater. So I do design costumes. My training is primarily in costume technology and crafts, so building costumes and puppets and things like that. And then I also have worked quite a bit as a special effects makeup artist. And so I would have no way of estimating how many shows that I've done total. But if I'm thinking about what it says on my CV as far as like design and technology, it has to be upwards of like 140.
Impressive.
So just a couple.
Yeah, just like a handful.
You're new at this. Gotcha.
Yeah, brand new. Brand spanking new.
And you do stuff for the University of Toledo.
Yeah, that's my main job. That's my home base. I work at the University of Toledo. I am a professor or a faculty member in the theater department in costume technology, but I also design a good bit of the shows there, about half of them.
I love how when I messaged you and said, Michael said you're somebody who does, and you're like, who's asking?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like, Well, the reason I ask is because I cannot tell you how many times people will contact me and they'll say, so-and-so told me that you work in costumes. And I'm like, yes, I do. Why? And the answer is like, can you do this 98 child musical for $22?
Oh.
And the answer to that is no, I cannot and will not. And so that's why I'm a little bit quick on the like, why? Who sent you?
Yeah, apprehensive, like,
Yeah.
Who? I don't know who you are. You just cold messaged me on Facebook. I don't know who you are.
You don't have to dress us, don't worry.
Well, and also it would depend on who sent you. Like it's kind of a little bit of that, like who sent you, because if someone like Michael sent you to me, then I trust that he's not sending you to me for something ridiculous. But, if someone I met once who knew I designed costumes sent you to, then I'm like, I'm weary. I gotta.
Do you have a favorite that you've done over the years? Or one or two or something?
Yeah. So in my undergrad, we did a couple shows that we took to Scotland that were kind of horror theater shows. And so I really love the idea of like doing horror theater.
You and my wife would just, you guys would be
I love
simpatico.
Horror movies. I love,
yes.
like give me a zombie for
Oh my gosh.
anything.
Okay, when we're done here, I'm going to introduce you to my wife so you guys can watch movies together. She
Well,
watches. Have you seen Zombiever?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. See, two people who have seen Zombiever.
The only two,
need to
maybe.
get together.
All right, sorry, I'm not on that list.
Yeah, and maybe she wants to do a photo. I do special
She
effects
described
makeup.
it to me, and I thought, well, that actually is fun. I might need to see that movie.
It's ridiculous. You should.
Right. The fly is a zombie as it's flying
Yeah.
around. She showed me that. I'm like, okay, I
Yeah.
will be watching this.
It's a
So
good one.
what was the one that went to Scotland, or what did that?
There were two. They were written by my professor at my undergrad, David Skeel, and we did The Margins, and it's another show called Dark North, and he wrote both of them. They're both, I don't want to say similar, but they are similarly themed in that they're about hauntings, and they're kind of like psychological horrors. And so those are really fun. I did the mystery.
But what was it that made them so much better than the other ones? Because nobody knows these shows because they're written by. What was so great about the costuming for that?
Well, actually, so a lot of the shows that I would say are like my favorite don't necessarily have anything to do with costumes. It's about the process in general and like the end product that we've got. And so I would not say that either of those shows were particularly impressive costume-wise, although I was doing like blood makeup in a theater where we had to like strike our set every night and set it up every day and then wash the costumes in a sink every night.
The glamour of theater sometimes, right?
Especially theater overseas in a festival. So I wouldn't say that like they were particularly amazing costume-wise. It was a good group of people, a good energy, and the end product was really, I think it was in a lot of ways really special. I would say costume-wise, probably one of my favorite shows I've done is called The Mystery of Irma Vep.
You know that show, Tom?
Only because I read up on her.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
you're a cheater. I'm like, I don't know.
So The Mystery of Irma Vep is one of those shows that has two actors playing a billion characters. And the storyline is very ridiculous about a house that might be haunted and there's werewolves, and at one point like an Egyptian priestess comes out of a sarcophagi, someone loses an arm, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a safari involved. It's better that you don't know any more than I just told you.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So, but if anyone wants to do this show, call me. I'd love to costume it again. So you have two actors, and they're constantly switching back and forth between these characters. And so it's just a quick change medley. I mean, it is like a 2-hour workout. I mean, I worked on the costumes for that show, and then I also ran wardrobe for that show, and I cannot tell you how many bruises we recovered in from getting an accidental shoe to the chin and whatnot.
Shoe to the chin?
Absolutely shoe to the chin.
I didn't expect shoe to the chin. I expect shoe to the shin, maybe, but not to the chin.
Yeah, so one of the methods we would use, and this is obviously podcasts are not a visual medium, but we would take a dress that we would seal up the back, and you'd hold it, and you'd run at the actor, and they would, with their arms out, you'd just throw it on them, and then you'd hit the floor so they could keep running, and then another person would run behind them and seal up the back of it. Because a lot of times what would happen...
That's insane.
I know. Is that there would be like a stage door or a door on the set on stage left, and then a door 10 feet away on stage right, and the actor would leave on stage left and come back on immediately stage right as a different character. And so you needed to be able to change people, in very, very quick periods of time. And it was pure chaos backstage. And by the end of it, every night we were just like laying in a corner, hoping that like we could find all the pieces that were strewn about the theater. But it's a really fun show for the crew, the actors, the audience. I think maybe the director is probably the least fun part of it, because it's a lot to kind of finagle, but...
I love that you're not like, I designed the costumes and then I stepped away. You're very hands-on. The fact that you're a tech person, you're a makeup person, you're a costume, that is the most fascinating part to me, because you know all the aspects, the ins and the outs of like, if I design this costume, I want the makeup also to be like this, but you also have to know the technical breakdown of how that...
Yeah, so much of the job of a designer is interfacing with the realities of that costume. And sometimes you're lucky enough to have a whole separate group of people whose job it is to make that happen. And sometimes you're not, and so a lot of times it's... I'm the one designing it, and then I'm the one building it, and then, but for some parts of my career, I have had the good fortune to be able to design a show and then walk away from it. But, I don't really prefer one process over the other. One pays better, but other than that... I don't necessarily like to let it walk away from it and leave it go, but I also don't like to hold on to it forever either. So
it's a good thing this isn't a visual thing, because Kyle and I would be trying those clothes running into it.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
We'll try to work.
Yeah, I'm thinking like for a promo. That sounds great.
I want a foot to the chin.
Yeah.
I figured someone just threw a shoe at you.
Yeah, I mean.
I think it's interesting. I do love that fact. I do love that, like you said, you get to sometimes walk away. Mm-hmm. So that gives you a little bit of a respite, right?
Yeah, like sometimes I hand the show off and I'm like, it's yours now. Call me if something explodes. I mean, that's as training for my students at the university, part of my job is making sure that my student wardrobe team has what they need to succeed as far as repairing minimal issues, but so that whenever they go out in the real world and hopefully go do wardrobe for big theaters that they will know what they need to do to fix things, because there won't always be somebody there that knows more than them. You know, that someday they are going to be the person that knows the most. And so I try to make sure that they have what they need. And so oftentimes the shows that I do at the university are very hands-off for me. Once I say, okay, I'm done now, here's final dress, it's your turn. But they also always can call me if chaos reigns, which it sometimes does. And I'm always there to kind of help fix things. But so yeah, it's kind of the best of both worlds at the university for me.
When you do what would you call it? I mean, the King and I, a standard. If you were to do one like that, which I think you actually have, haven't you?
I actually have not done a ton of standards. I really wasn't a big fan of musicals, and so I kind of avoided them for a very long time unless I had to for money. But
so would you consider yourself more of a freelance designer?
Oh, no, I would say I am proudly and passionately a faculty member at the University of Toledo, working on those shows. And then I also freelance on the side. I don't work with any one company anywhere. So
okay, when I mean freelance in your designing. I mean, you get a show, and instead of going by what it was in the movie or what was in something else before, you come up with your own creative freelance.
Sure. Yeah, no, I totally understand what you're saying. So we did, at the university, we did Into the Woods. My scope of time since the pandemic is ridiculous. Like something could be 1 year ago or 5 years ago, and I cannot remember. And so we did Into the Woods some time ago.
Some time ago, yeah.
Yeah, and I actually had never seen the musical or the movie. And so,
beautiful.
Yeah, so I made it a very pointed effort to not see anything from the Broadway production or the movie, so that everything I did would be my own thoughts. And not that it's not wrong to take standard ideas from shows. There are things that go along with a show that become what the audience expects. Like if I didn't put Cinderella in light blue,
right,
that would be weird for the audience.
Yeah, Legally Blonde, her signature color is pink.
Exactly. And like everyone, when you think of Cinderella, you think of that light blue, white apron, you know. So I knew there were things I would have to adhere to, but I didn't have in my head all of the knowledge of the previous productions to say like, well, this is what Into the Woods looked like, which turned out to be a really cool experience because so many people came to me after the show saying, well, that wasn't what I expected. And most of the time, I think they meant that in a good way. Sometimes they didn't. Sometimes people don't like change, and that's fine. My shows are probably not the shows you want to come see. But like, that's okay. I'm happy that there are shows out there that will deliver the product you expect every time. But mine probably won't be that. After the production was over, I let myself kind of look at pictures and videos and stuff, and my production really did look quite different, but had a very similar feel overall, which to me tells me that the original design was done well and that my design was also done well, since, you know, they still felt like the same show, even though they were very different visually.
Very cool.
Is there one that you would like to do that's out there?
Yeah, there's lots of shows that I would love to do, and there's shows that I've done before that I would love to do again. A show I've never done that I would love to do is Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson.
Nice.
Yeah, that's that kind of like rock pseudo-political genre is really, as far as musical goes, I loved Bloody Bloody pre-Hamilton.
Nobody does it either. I don't understand.
I think it's a hard musical to toe the line between what is inappropriate and what is satire. You know, there's a lot of talk of Indians and things like that in Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson.
Andrew Jackson.
Exactly. But as someone who is what considers herself or tries to be very socially conscious, I do think it's important that we understand that like satire is an art form. And so when we're talking about the 10 Little Indians, we're not saying that that's okay to say. We're saying that it's inappropriate and that its place within this musical which is overall talking about how terrible, Andrew Jackson was, is that it has a place there. And so I just think in a climate that's socially difficult, it's not a show that I think feels easily done, which again, I understand, but it is a show that I would like to do because I think it's a fun one. I love Shakespeare. I'd love to do Titus Andronicus. I'd love to do, it's a Jacobean show, the era right after Shakespeare, called 'Tis Pity She's a Whore. You can believe that if you need to.
It's a love story.
Well,
I don't know these stories at all.
it's not a love story, but it's certainly not an appropriate love story. We'll say that.
Check. What do you want us, when we go see a show that you have, what do you want us to get out of your costuming, everything you do on the set?
So 2 things. 1, nothing. I want it to blend in entirely. Awesome. I want you to watch the show, and unless something happens that you're meant to notice, like a cool quick change or something, I don't really want you to notice it at all, because that's the mark of an appropriately done design.
That's every tech person. I swear they have the same ideas, like the pit. If the pit sounds beautiful, you notice nothing.
Right.
If it hits a sour note, you're like, "Ooh, what was that?"
Exactly.
And same with the lighting and just So go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
That's again. I never think about this stuff when it comes to costuming, but it's true.
Right. If someone walked out in a hideous green dress and then that whole show, that hideous green dress is never explained, that's a fault of the designer. And I think because now you're focused on that dress when what you should be focused on is what the character is doing. And so ideally, if you come see a show that I've designed, you don't notice it. If you're going to notice it, it's because I've done something spectacular. And honestly, I think the best thing to notice about that has nothing to do with me. It's how many people had to work to make that thing happen. It's because it's so... There's nothing in theater, and I've worked in lots of areas. I do, like I've said, I do costumes, makeup, tech, all that stuff. But I also spent quite a bit of time not working in theater at all. I was working in entertainment, period, ? And so, and that could include lots of things, but I was working in Vegas. And so I was doing lots of different areas. I've done, music videos. I've done film, television. I've done the largest rodeo in the world. I've opened nightclub acts at, for done the theming and costuming for that.
Damn, you're kind of a big deal.
I don't know.
Michael said, have this person on, and then you show up and you're like this diamond in Toledo. It's amazing.
I'm not, though. There's so many cool people here. One of my coworkers does the lighting, works for the company that does the lighting for everything the NBA does except for the regular games. So the All-Star games, the thing where they pick you out of a lineup. I don't know anything about sports.
I'll need that person on next.
Okay.
Lighting.
Yeah, I'll give you
this is stage door, not basketball.
Well, he's a theater designer.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is that almost none of us just do theater. We all do lots of things, and that's because A, we have varied and wide interests, and B, we're chasing that dollar just like everyone else.
Yeah, you gotta feed your family, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And so you can do projects that fulfill your heart, but at the end of the day, if you want to be a working artist, you have to do things that are outside of that and really commercial. But I've worked in so many areas that, that have bigger budgets and more, better resources and whatnot. But I will always come back to theater, because at the end of the day, it's not about me. It's about the team of people that we've put together, making a product that we give to the audience. And everything we do is in service to the audience. And that's one of the things that's a core tenet to my philosophy of theater and theater making is that everything I do is in service to the audience. The audience is the most important part of the equation. And if they don't understand, no matter how high art, highbrow, whatever I think I've done, no matter how proud of it I am, it's a complete failure. If the audience doesn't understand it, that doesn't mean like it. But if they don't understand it, then I failed. And we failed as a team. And that's something that like I want you to notice when you go to shows is that just how many people went into making like one moment happen. You know, the choreographer, the director, that actor, the wardrobe technicians, the sound person who's rewiring the mic backstage, you know, the costume designer who had to come up with the scheme in the first place, you know, and every mentor I've ever had, you know, like there's so many people that like put that moment in place that to make that thing happen, and to think about like how undervalued that is to people in general is, you know, is maddening to me. But also I think it gives us a good opportunity to show people that like we do really cool things, you know, and we do really cool things here in Toledo. And I'm happy to be here at this time, you know, when there's like a lot of really cool things going on.
I love the humbleness of the people who are behind the scenes. You know, how I feel as though like the costumers and the pit orchestra and the guy who's running the spotlight, you know, they're not doing it for the glory. They are doing it for the camaraderie and the teamwork and everything, to put like you said, to put this thing out there for these people like me and Tom and Ron to just get wrapped up in that emotional moment.
Right. And I mean, at the end of the day, like I said in the very beginning, most of us got into it to make friends, you know, and find a family when, you know, we didn't necessarily have one. And so, you know, that's what I think theater represents to the people who do it. And then it's really cool that we can take something that's really important to us and deliver a product that might be really important to the audience, either because it's entertaining and it uplifts you in a time where you need that, or because it teaches you something new, or it allows you to empathize with a kind of person that you might not have otherwise had any reason to empathize with, you know. And that's, I think all of those things, you know, are encompassed in like what we call like the power of theater and the power of live performance.
This sounds like part of probably your class. Is this how you kind of teach your class, or how did you get involved in the University of Toledo?
Well, I was in Vegas, and I was working. And Vegas is not a lifestyle that is sustainable as a person who, like, unless you have a very regular gig, you know. So I have friends who work at Cirque and things like that who have very regular gigs, and it's sustainable for them. But the way that I was doing it was very unsustainable, mostly because of the demands on my time. And I was, you know, I would have to set alarms because I would be going to like official meetings at 3 a.m, you know, and so it was difficult. It would have been doable, except for that I also really missed my family. And so one night after a particularly difficult string of days, I just kind of said to myself, I'm going to start looking for a job that puts me closer to home. And I don't necessarily care what that job is. And I have a terminal degree, so I am I'm qualified to work at a university. Obviously, it's, you know, a PhD equivalent. And I love teaching, and so I knew I wanted to teach as well. And as I started looking for jobs, this one came up, and I just had a good feeling about it. And so I sent my information in, and I was exactly who they were looking for. And so it was a very quick process, and I was, I think, on my way to Toledo a week later and out of Vegas, and here I've been ever since. That was 2015, I think. So nice.
So it's a good thing you like knew how to work that drill.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks Poppy for teaching me how to. My grandpa taught me, and my dad taught me a lot about working with wood when I was little.
Hey, all of this spurred from you knowing how to work a hand drill.
Yeah.
Well, said, sorry, don't know how to work a hand drill. I just can't do this.
You know what, though? They'd have handed me a paintbrush. Like, it was just about bringing people into the mix, and, you know, something wonderful is born whenever you need a bunch of help and you have a bunch of people who are willing, and, you know, you put 1 8-hour day in at the theater and everyone asks you to go out for hot dogs afterwards. And now all of a sudden, the reason that I had been a day away from dropping out of college had been solved. And I was in this I didn't know anything about what I was doing. But I've always been the kind of person that, if you put a task in front of me, I will figure it out. And I'm a firm believer in that there's very little I can't do. Except for lighting. I can't do lighting. Everyone who knows me...
Lighting, forget it, man.
Everyone who knows me would agree I cannot do lighting. But because I didn't even start out in costumes. I started out as doing scene painting and props. And then I kind of moved into costumes. Because I don't know, it's just fun.
I love it, though. You just kept flowing around, hanging out backstage. I know how to work a drill. Next thing I know, I'm just making costumes in Vegas.
Exactly. Well, isn't everyone's process similar?
Yes,
know.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
I think it is. I think that's how it's done. That from this point on is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to learn how to use the drill.
I still find feathers in various boxes from costumes I did in Vegas, and so that stays with me forever.
So, if somebody's out there listening to this, and they want to become a costume designer. What do you want to tell them?
I'm going to tell them two things at least. One is that remember there are many areas of costumes that are not just design, that there are many people who go into making a dress. And so if you're not sure that design is your thing, but you love costumes, there's a home for you. And two is just start doing it. You need to know very little to try. And if trying means calling up any of the local companies and asking if you could talk to their costume designer and just try it, do it. Why not? Call me. I'm at the University of Toledo. You can find me very easily, and just try. That's what's the worst that could happen. And no matter how old you are, that's ageist and stupid. Don't worry about that. If you're 52 and you want to learn how to do costumes, let's do it. But that's it. You just have to do it, and then you have to care enough to keep doing it. And that is the only difference between the people who quote unquote make it in theater and who don't. And I do want to clarify, when I say make it in theater, I don't mean people whose full-time job is to do theater. I think that's an elitist attitude, and I think that the best thing about what we do is like our collective stories that we bring into it. But what I mean by make it in theater is someone who consistently works and does what they want, within the world of theater, and they don't just jump ship because it's not the easiest lifestyle, especially if you set out to do it professionally. But
fantastic,
you will make it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly how you guys started this podcast. You just did it.
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah.
We just did it.
Yeah.
We're tired of sitting around waiting for people to talk about how great theater is in the area. So we just said, let's just do it, man. This is dumb. Let's do it, man.
It's pretty much the philosophy of everything I've done in my life is I'm just like, I want to do that. I'm going to do it.